Marc Raimondi here for MMAfighting.com in New Orleans. It's WrestleMania week here, but it's not just pertinent this year for wrestling fans. There are a lot of interesting MMA topics this year. Ronda Rousey is making her in-ring debut at WrestleMania 34 on Sunday. Brock Lesnar is in the main event of WrestleMania, and he might be going back to the UFC. So who better to discuss all of these topics with than this man, Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer and MMAfighting.com. Dave, how's your New Orleans trip going so far?
It's taxing. It's something. I mean, this has been a news day like I've never seen in my life. It's like you go away to wrestling and I go, it's just a day in the week, you know, and then it's like, oh my God, the busiest MMA news day in so long. So it's two days of complete insanity.
We will circle back to the news that Dave is talking about in just a little bit. First, I want to ask you about Ronda Rousey. Now, this is someone whose career you followed for a very long time.
Yep.
Through the UFC, I mean, before that, even in judo.
Yeah,
right,
even before UFC, yeah.
In judo, Strikeforce, UFC, she's making her in-ring debut on Sunday. It's a big deal. As far as the mainstream goes, she's getting as much mainstream attention as anyone going to WrestleMania. How do you think she does? And can you articulate exactly, like, I think people don't really know the difference between, I mean, it's obviously a vastly different art, right, than MMA is.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's something that you have. There's a learning curve to it. It takes years and years and years to master it, and everyone else at WrestleMania has had those years and years and years, and she's being thrust in, you know, what's probably one of the 2 or 3 biggest matches on the show, and from the mainstream interest, the biggest match on the show, and you know, she's going against Stephanie McMahon, who is not really a trained wrestler, although she's done this, you know, a dozen or so times in her life, so it's a really interesting thing. I mean, they will lay it out. It's a mixed tag match. You got Kurt Angle and Triple H, who are masters at this craft, even though they're past their, I don't want to say past their primes. That's really not nice to say, but they're in their late 40s. But they're masters of their craft. Like, so they will work the majority of the match, and that majority of the match will be really good. It will set the women up for some, you know, very carefully put together things that should be okay, that are there to make Ronda look good, to do what Ronda can do. And in theory, it should be all right. I mean, but you never know. I mean, it is someone, I've seen a lot of people in their first, I've seen experienced people at WrestleMania come in and not do well. So, you know, in your first match and you're in front of 65,000 people, you know, this is going to be a tough thing. Now, Mayweather pulled it off, though, in his first match. Lawrence Taylor pulled it off. So there is, Mr. T pulled it off once, and the second time was a complete disaster. So there's a hit and miss. You just don't know which one it's going to be.
She's only been training, I guess, for less than a year. I know she maybe dabbled in it before that, but she's only really been training seriously for less than a year.
Seriously, less than a year, yeah.
Realistically, what can one really expect? I mean, she's not going to go out there and have a 5-star match right away.
No. But the other ones, you know, I mean, Kurt Angle and Triple H as like I said, they'll set everything up. I mean, they could have a really good match. I mean, I never bet against Kurt Angle having a good match or Triple H. They're 2 of the best of the last 20 years.
What have you heard about her training and how that's going?
That is one of those great secrets. I've heard at times that when she trains at the Performance Center, they put drapes around the ring so even the other trainers can't see what they're doing. So, you know, she's a good athlete. I've talked to people who have trained with her, and they feel that they could carry her in a match, that she understands certain aspects of wrestling. So it's like no one said she's a disaster. Oh my God, this is hopeless. I haven't heard anything like that. But I also haven't heard that she's Matt Riddle either. You know, which is someone who just like was a duck to water and just walked in and could do this. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, look, Shayna Baszler, who's one of her best friends, although she did a lot of independent stuff, she walked in and she's been phenomenal at this. So you just don't know. I mean, the athletic ability will help her without a doubt, but and she's watched it from with like Shayna, who really understands it, for a long time. So she's gonna have a concept of it. They're giving her crash courses with, you know, all kinds of people, so she should do all right. But you know, what if she panics? What if there's nerves? It could fall apart too.
She said that she is, quote, a full-time wrestler now, but what does that mean exactly? Does that mean she's gonna be at every Raw, you know, every pay-per-view event?
I don't know what full-time means because, again, this is her first match, and I haven't heard. I know she's scheduled to work SummerSlam,
right?
She's scheduled to work the Madison Square Garden show on July the 7th. So, I mean, I don't expect her on the road 200 days a year. She'll go crazy, most likely. And it would be bad for WWE too, because she's got to be. I'm thinking she's going to have like a Brock Lesnar schedule, where maybe a dozen matches a year or something like that. That would if I was in charge, that's how I would do it. Use her when it's prudent to use her carefully, use her with good people, and try to teach her. And her name value is really high, and all the women that are there will benefit from. Like any woman who does a match with her, it's going to up their standing. So she's real valuable. But the key to Ronda is in the TV negotiations. This is their TV negotiation period, and in the TV world, it's like you got one of the biggest women's sports celebrities, and you got her, and she's going to be on TV all the time. It's going to make them so much in rights because you're going to have not just the entertainment people, but sports channels like FS1. It's like it's pro wrestling, but it's Ronda Rousey. So. Their timing of landing her was exceptional.
So on the other hand, we have Brock Lesnar, who's in the main event, most likely of WrestleMania against Roman Reigns for the Universal title. And the big question about him is this it? Is this going to be his last match in WWE for the foreseeable future? Is he going back to the UFC? Dana White said this week he's going. He's going to be back in the UFC. It's a matter of not if, but when. What are you hearing, Dave?
I've been hearing that for months, that he was gone. But what I have to say, where I'm going to temper this, is 3 years ago when the whole thing came up, I was hearing the same thing. And remember, he went to the UFC, and he did the camp, and it's like he was going. And then a week before, he goes on ESPN, and you don't know which way it's going. Oh, I'm staying, and I'm never going to fight again. And then he ended up... I know he was really gung-ho on fighting John Jones, because I think they thought that was a giant money fight. And when I heard... when it was John Jones, it was like... I was told it's 100% he's leaving, at least to fight John Jones, at least for a little while. Probably come back at some point. And I think right now, the impression I get is they feel that because UFC needs big stars right now, that he can cut a really good deal and that he'll come back. But the idea, I expect him back in wrestling at some point. Although on Raw, Paul Heyman and Brock Lesnar, in their interview, Paul Heyman said that if Roman Reigns wins, you'll never see us on Raw again. And so but here's the other thing too. They want everyone to think Brock's not coming in because the key to all this is they have been desperately trying for Roman Reigns to get cheered. And no matter how heinous Brock Lesnar treats him, the fans are not booing Brock Lesnar. A little bit, some of them have. But, 3 years ago at WrestleMania, they had this exact same match, and they worked and worked and worked to get everyone to cheer Roman Reigns, and nobody was booed more on that show in Santa Clara than Roman Reigns, and nobody was cheered more than Brock Lesnar. And so they don't want a repeat of it. So they're telling people, this guy hates you wrestling fans. This guy has no respect for wrestling or wrestlers. He's just in it for the money, and now he's leaving you. Because 2004, so 14 years ago, they had a match with Brock Lesnar and Bill Goldberg where everybody knew that it was Brock Lesnar had given his notice and he was leaving, and everybody booed Brock Lesnar like it was crazy. So they're trying to go, this worked 14 years ago, so if we tell everyone Brock is gone, Dana's saying it. Some people go, why would Dana do that and ruin WrestleMania? It's like, I'm sure Dana did it with a complete blessing of WWE because all they want is Roman Reigns to get cheered in this match, and we'll see. This is the crowd that is going to. This is a crowd that's going to boo Roman Reigns more than any crowd. It's that hardcore crowd. Every WrestleMania he gets booed, and they're just fighting it. And so, but as far as Brock, I believe Brock Lesnar will be back someday because Brock Lesnar belongs in wrestling. But I think it's a pretty good chance he'll do UFC. You never know. You never know for sure. But certainly that's what everyone's been talking about for a long time, that he's going.
And with where the UFC is right now, kind of in dire need of some big stars, especially after what happened the last few days with Conor McGregor, and we'll get to that in a second, but does the UFC offer him a boatload of money now? Start talking about Brock Lesnar.
Well, I think that they were going to anyway, because he's a big drawing card, and it's going to take a boatload of money to get him. If they don't look, WWE offers him a boatload of money. We'll offer him. They've got to outbid WWE, and Brock's a mercenary. He's going to go where the money is. I heard, didn't Dana talk about him fighting the winner of Miocic and Cormier?
Today he did, yes.
Isn't that amazing? The guy, he did beat Marc Hunt, but that's overturned. So the guy hasn't had a legitimate win in UFC since Carwin, right?
Yep.
I mean, that was a long time ago, and he's almost 41 years old. He'll be 41 by the time he fights. And it's one thing for a Mark Hunt with the great knockout power at 41 to fight, or someone like that. But for a wrestler, who's gone through the pro wrestling thing, and man, that's it's again. But I thought that Mark Hunt was going to beat him, and Mark Hunt didn't beat him. So who knows?
And one thing to note also, Brock Lesnar can't actually come back officially until he's back in the USADA drug testing pool. He's got to be in that pool for 6 months, and
he still hasn't come in.
Right, he's not in as of today.
I mean, that's what's weird to me is I would have thought that in January, because if he was going to start going in for the pool in January, so then by the summer you can go and fight. Because why would, I mean, 6 months is almost to the end of the year. UFC needs some. They need some stuff in August, September, quicker than 6 months.
Okay, one last thing. So Conor McGregor was arrested, I guess, earlier today on Friday morning. I'm sure everyone has seen the video already, so I'm not going to rehash too much. He threw a dolly at the UFC van, the UFC bus, at the UFC 223 Media Day at Barclays Center in Brooklyn. A whole bunch of charges for McGregor. His next hearing date in Brooklyn is going to be in June. Just a crazy scene this week in Brooklyn at the UFC. What is your immediate reaction? Dave, you're a historian of wrestling and mixed martial arts. Have you ever seen anything like this?
No. I mean, what's the closest thing is Rampage?
The pregnant woman and the...
Right,
yeah.
right. But Rampage, didn't ruin a show. I mean, it's like I've never seen anything. I'm trying to think. I've never heard of anything in boxing like this. There's been brawls in boxing and things like that, but nothing where what would we have 3 matches?
3 fights canceled because of the incident.
Is it 3 or is it 4?
Well, I guess 3 because Lobov was on McGregor's team, so
Right.
that fight was
Yes
off.
is off, and Borg is off. But is Pettis fighting Felder? I don't even know.
Pettis is not fighting Felder because they're teammates at Rufus Sport.
So they're both off the show too. So it's 4 fights off. It's it's mind-boggling. This whole last 2 days has been mind-boggling with everything. Every time everything that could go wrong. Max Holloway gets, Yes,
that's a good way to put it. Just head in hand.
But I mean, it's like the sad part about the Max Holloway story is that you go back just a couple of days, and then they're talking about like he has to drop whatever it is. Nobody would give you the number, but by everything they said, I'm thinking it's like this is 25 to 30 pounds in 6 days, and it's like that's man, no camp. I mean, they probably would have been better off just going with someone on the card or Ortega, who I guess probably wasn't as heavy, but I know why they Max is the biggest name. Max, like when they announced Max as the substitute, it was kind of like, okay, we lost this fight we really wanted, but this is a really intriguing fight. So I get what they were doing, but it's like by doing it, it's like it's going against everything that they said about we want to make it safer, we don't want these crash weight cuts, and they put a guy in who was going to have to crash weight cut, and then it blew up. The day before when the commission wouldn't let him, or actually I guess it was I guess it was actually UFC doctors wouldn't let him cut anymore or something. So, wow.
Wow. I think that's all for us. I think we covered pretty much everything here. Stay tuned the rest of the weekend for UFC 223 coverage. Got Ariel Helwani and the gang in Brooklyn, and WrestleMania coverage from New Orleans as well. Stay posted at MMAfighting.com.